Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the most OP Bard Fighter build guide for in Baldur's Gate 3. This is one of the strongest multi-class, and I'm going to show you why. We can basically solo the entire game with this build, guys. This is an absolutely crazy build. So we're going to want to start off as the fighter for level 1, because starting with fighter is going to give us constitution saving throw proficiency, and a big component of this build is the ability to be able to lock down enemies on the battlefield and continually attack them without us getting attacked. So you can legit solo the whole game without getting hit. So we're going to start off with a fighter, and for our fighting style, defense gives us a nice +1 to armor class, but archery is also really nice. So this is going to give us a +2 to ranged weapon attacks, giving us a higher likelihood of hitting our archery attacks, which is a good portion of what we're going to be doing with this build. So if you want one more armor class, it's either one of these two. I'm going to take archery, and I'm going to explain why, because we will be using crossbows to set up our skills, and it gets pretty crazy. So as far as our stats go, we're going to actually want to be going into our charisma as much as possible. Now, there's a couple ways we can build this. If you want to take high dexterity, you can go that route and pump our dexterity up. We want to have roughly somewhere around this for our stats, but you can also dump your dexterity and put it into other stats if you get the dexterity gauntlets. So two different ways you can go about doing that. I'll get into the build specific gear at the end, and if so, you could take your strength a little bit higher. Something like that would be great. So strength 15, constitution 16, charisma 17 is not ideal to have things on odd numbers, but I'll get into why we're going to do it this way. So what makes this build actually crazy is the gear, but I'm going to get into gear at the end. We're going to take another level of fighter here for action surge. This gives us an extra action, so very broken. It allows us to literally solo the game. And then next we're going to take a we're not actually going to add in the battle master. We're going to go back to the bard, or we're going to go to the bard here. For cantrips, vicious mockery is awesome for a cantrip. It's fun to hear characters yell at the enemies. If you're the face of the party, you got to take friends. This gives you advantage on charisma checks. Very useful in this game. Minor illusion is another really good cantrip because we're able to group enemies together or lure them away if we want to steal. For our spells, there's a few good ones that we like to have. Healing word as a bonus action can help bring up your team if they get downed, so that's an option there. Thunderwave can give you a pushback. There's not like amazing spells here. Long Strider will give you an extra 3 movement speed since it's a ritual, so it'll last until long rest. Dissonant Whispers can frighten a creature, so I like to have those 3. Your final one can be like Sleep or Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I think those are 2 of the better ones. I'm going to go with Tasha's. And you can take Violin or Lyre, or whatever you find best. And then you can change your skill proficiencies here if you want to add like Sleight of Hand to increase your chances of picking locks, or really whatever you want to go with there. So you get the Bardic Inspiration as well at this level. And we're going to zip through the levels here at Bard, because the gear is what makes this build so great. So Jack of all trades, proficiency bonus added to our ability checks that we're not proficient in. And then Song of Rest is just awesome to have. For our spells, we're going to take Sleep probably. Disguise Self can also have some utility, so if you like to go with that route, if you accidentally killed someone and you Speak with the Dead, you can use that to be able to talk to them because they won't talk to you otherwise. Now, what makes this build so powerful is our subclass. We're going to go College of Swords, because we get ourselves Defensive Flourish, which can increase our armor class by 4, but Slashing Flourish, attack 2 enemies at once. And then we also have the Slashing Flourish on our ranged attacks, giving us the ability to attack 2 enemies at once. It's just absolutely broken, and I'm going to get into how this can stack and make our build super powerful. So that's what we're going to take there. We also get a fighting style, so dueling can be okay if we're using like only 1 weapon, but 2 weapon fighting is what we're going with here. I'm using 2 weapons, but if you want to go dueling, you can take a shield. I just think it's better to go with the 2 weapon fighting, because when you make an attack with your offhand, you can add your ability modifier. Pretty nice, but dueling is good too, because it'll increase your overall damage if you're wearing a shield. Either one of those is decent. Now, as far as our level 2 spells go, we want Hold Person. This is really powerful and a big component of this build, so we're going to be taking that at the level 2. Heat Metal can be a good concentration early on for damage as well, so you could take that too, but we're going to go with this here for our level 2 in Bard. Now, or level 3 in Bard. For level 4, we get a feat, so it's going to be very useful here. Mage Hand can be nice as well to set up the rest of your team. If you have lightning damage on your team, like a sorcerer, that can throw a water bottle. Super useful for that. Clouded Daggers can be kind of nice too, just for early game damage, but Enthrall is another enchantment spell that we could be using. So later on, we're going to be using illusion and enchantment. So we can use that, but I find there's better options elsewhere. So Crown of Madness also has some usefulness in this build, so you could go with either one of these. They're both concentrations. We're going to take an ability improvement. We'll take our charisma up to 19. Now, if this is your Tav or Dark Urge, use the Hag's Hair and get your charisma up to 20. That's the reason why that I left it at the 19 on an odd number, is that if you have the Hag's Hair, it'll take it up to 18, and then you can add this up to 20. For the purpose of this build, we'll pretend this is 20. Otherwise, you'd probably want to split it between the strength just to have another stat evened. Now, at level 5, we get ourselves the Bardic Inspiration after a long or short rest, and it increases to a 1d8, so a little bit nicer there. And then we get our access to level 3 spells. Now, there's some great illusion spells here that we could take. Hypnotic Pattern will hypnotize creatures that can see the pattern. They cannot attack you, cannot move or act. It's pretty good. Fear is another spell that's really good, too. So targets drop everything and become fearful. They have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. What makes this so powerful is the fact that you can grab their weapon and make them useless. So that's great. Hypnotic Pattern's great. I really like Glyph of Warding though, and the reason I'm going to take this one is we can set it down on the ground, put a sleep Glyph of Warding, and it's just great crowd control, but it can also deal lightning damage, so it has some synergy with other builds if you're going like a lightning environmental build. And then for our next spell, we'll take either Fear or Hypnotic Pattern. I typically prefer Fear because we're going to be using other spells, and Hold Person can be upcast. We also get our Counter Charm, so any allies within 9 meters have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. And then we also get our extra attack. So we get 2 attacks and we can flourish, so we can attack 4 people per turn. Pretty great. And then we can also use things like the Arrow of Many Targets, which is a big component of this build. Confusion is a really good cantrip, or a really good spell. Level 4, it'll confuse a large area, larger than a fireball, and it'll make them attack at random, wander aimlessly, and skip their turns in the stupor. Super useful, so we're going to be taking that. And you're going to see that that gets pretty powerful later on in the game. Now for our next leveled spell, Plant Growth is another one that's nice because it doesn't use a concentration. And it opens up a large area to make it difficult terrain, and it quarters movement speed. So this does have some synergy if you have like a Warlock and you have Hunger of Hadar. They go together great. Minor Illusion, or Greater Illusion is another great one, and Dimension Door. Hypnotic Pattern, it's tough for this level spell. I would go Hypnotic Pattern or Plant Growth. Dimension Door is nice, but we can leave Confusion for our level 4 spells. And then we'll take our Charisma up even higher now. So you would, I guess if you don't have any Charisma to increase, like if you already have the Hag's Hair plus 2, you can take up the Constitution to 18. Giving us more health is always a good idea because this build can have a lot of usefulness and we want to stay alive. So we're going to go with that. Now, there's other options that you can go with, like Sharpshooter, if you wanted to increase your overall weapon damage there, but we're not going to go with it for the purposes of this build. I think that Hold Monster is another great spell that we could use. It gives us the ability to use this at a... I'll show you how we can use this, but we're going to use that. Dominate Person is another option, but I think Hold Monster is a bit better. Hold Monster can hold anyone that's not undead, so it's useful. Now, the final level gives us another cantrip, so we can just take whatever. Spell, we can take Planar Binding's pretty good. Dimension Door. One of these earlier ones that you haven't taken. Maybe Dominate Person we'll take. For our magical secrets, this is where things can get pretty interesting. So we do have Banishing Smite, which is a nice choice. Abjuration spell, possibly banish your target to another plane of existence. Although that sounds awesome, it's not as great as it sounds from my testing, because if you're attacking someone, you're going to want to try and take them out, and targets with 50 health points or more cannot be banished. So this is, like, it's good, but it has very limited usefulness. I think that, as silly as it is, taking command is actually one of the best options here. I'm going to get into why. It might not seem like it's the best option, but it is really great. And then I also like Conjure Elemental. Having elementals around is really nice. But there's a few other options we can go with. Cone of Cold If you have a team that's focused on water, I actually have my Bard always having Cone of Cold with Magic Seekers because I run a lot of water teams, and this here hits a huge area and allows your Bard to stick with the theme, as you do get two choices here. So that can be an option if you go with water damage. Call Lightning can be nice, and Hunger of Hadar is also another great option. This does require concentration, and we're going to be using a lot of other concentration spells, so something else might be more worthwhile. Misty Step can be good. Misty Step is always good. Armor of Agathis can have its uses. I do think that command is really the most important one that we need to have here. Counterspell can be good too. If we're trying to play this game solo, Counterspell can be a lifesaver, so I would recommend it there if you're trying to do this full on your own without any other party members. But Magic Missile also is another option to give you guaranteed damage. Spirit Guardians can hit enemies in your close range. We just need command. That's the only one that we really do need. But if you're doing the solo, haste can be another good option. So Conjure Elemental, Cone of Cold, Counterspell, Haste, Spirit Guardians, or Magic Missile. One of these three, you're not going to go wrong with either of those. So we also get to choose proficiency and skills. I like acrobatics and athletics so you don't get shoved and you can shove better. But it's your choice entirely. So how this build works, we're going to get into the gear side of things because the gear is actually crazy for this build. So we're going to be starting with the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. So whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Acuity for 2 turns. What this means is we get a +1 to our spell save DC, meaning that when we cast spells, they're going to be hard for the enemy to resist. What we can also do is we can do a Slashing Flourish, and then we can attack and hit many targets, or we can also just use our regular old attack. I don't think I have arrows equipped on here, but if you have arrows of many targets, you can use them to hit every enemy in the area, and that's going to count as a hit for this whenever you deal weapon damage with a weapon attack. So having those arrows on your class, you're able to deal damage to a multitude of enemies, and it's going to set up +10 to our spell save DC. So that gets great. It takes our ability, it takes 8 plus our ability score modifier, which is going to be +5 from charisma. It says +4. We're assuming that we have the +5. So we're going to have 8 + 5 + 10. And then we also got other items that's going to boost our spell save DC. So like our Amulet of Devout, high spell casting gives us a +2. Cloak of the Weave gives us a +1 to our spell save DC. I like the Armor of Agility just because it can give us like a pretty decent armor class if we use it with the Gloves of Dexterity. And the Gloves of Dexterity gives us a +2 our attack rolls, so we're more likely to hit our attacks, which is pretty useful for this build. There are some other items like Hell Dust Gloves will give us an additional damage to additional 1d6 fire and 1d6 necrotic, and can possibly inflict bleeding, so it's very, very useful if you don't go the route of the Dexterity Gauntlets. But yeah, there's a few other options that we could go with. I just think that it's best to have something to keep yourself alive, especially. But Cloak of the Weave will give you a +1 to spell save DC as well. And there's other ways we can go about building that, but I like the higher armor class. Now we're going to have the Caustic Band doing Dancy Dance, +2 to acid damage there. I also like Killer Sweetheart, so you can swap either of those out. It's not necessarily to go with one or the other. If you have a ring for increased spell save DC, that'd be great too. But the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, this is where the build really comes together. So after hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast an illusion or enchantment spell as a bonus action. And we have lots of enchantment spells with Hold Person, Sleep, enchantment cantrips there. We got Crown of Madness, we got Fear, we got Confusion, Friends, Command. Command is going to be our main one, and Hold Person or Hold Monster, and Confusion. So Confusion hits a large area, which is really nice, so you can literally shut down the enemy team that way. But yeah, this is great because you can cast the illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action, allowing you to go in. Your typical way of dealing with enemies would be to attack with your arrow of many targets, hoping to hit as many people as possible, maybe followed up with another one, and then you're going to either cast, if everyone's together, you're going to cast Confusion. If not, you can upcast Command. Grovel will knock creatures prone. Flee will make them run away from you. Command Drop will give you their weapon, so this can actually be done early on to get some good weapons. Approach will command a creature to approach. This is typically the one you want to do, so you can upcast it, and then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and take out the entire. I guess we only have level 5 spells. You can hold 5 people with that, or you can use this and hold a large group of them. And then also you can use hold monster. We have one use of that, but if we use hold person, you do have that multiple. So command and hold person can be our main options there. And it gets pretty crazy because you can hold down the enemy team and then literally just take them all out, continually attacking them and keeping your spell save DC very high so they won't resist getting out of it. So yeah, this is a very powerful build in Baldur's Gate 3 due to the fact that you can shut down people with things like confusion very easily. So we confused Volo there and he ran away. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about it, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I respond to comments pretty quickly. And thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.